ओ ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। रामो राजमणिः सदा विजयते रामं रमेशं भजे। रामेणाभिहता निशाचरचमू रामाय तस्मै नमः। रामान्नास्ति परायणं परतरं रामस्य दासोऽस्म्यहम्। रामे चित्तलयः सदा भवतु मे भो राम मामुद्धर। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। Hari Om everyone. We were seeing the second chapter where Bhagwan had given a very clear instruction to Arjuna in 2 shlokas. He said, Tyaktva uttishta parantapa. Let go of these thoughts that you are having right now, Arjuna. Get up and do your duty. But Arjuna again comes back with some more points, thinking that Bhagwan has not understood what he is trying to say. And he logically puts forth his points once again, but at the end, he realizes that this is not going anywhere. In his heart, he has a lot of respect, reverence for Bhagwan. And he knows that his thinking is not aligning with what Bhagwan's thinking is right now. The way Bhagwan is seeing the situation, it is not in the same way that Arjuna is seeing. Having realized that, he says, Karpanya dosho upahata swabhavaha. Bhagwan, there is some kind of a defect in my vision, and that defect is called as Karpanya dosha. We saw different meanings of the word Karpanya also, but all in all, what he's saying there is, whatever knowledge I have gained from the past, whatever I have learned from scriptures, so many things are there. Nothing is coming handy right now. Just like that miser's money is neither useful for him nor useful for anybody else. So this is called as Buddhi Karpanya. Then he says, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. I am your disciple. You teach me what is Shreya, what is the absolute good for me. And right now I'm confused about what is my dharma. So both questions he has asked in a way. One, he is asking about, tell me what is the way of thinking in this particular situation, and what is the absolute good for me in my life. And it is said, any knowledge, music, dance, science, whatever it could be, whichever form of art or science, we are able to benefit from that knowledge only when we surrender ourselves to that altar. Sometimes we hear the phrase, right? He is a devoted musician, devoted scientist. What has that person done? He has submitted himself to this knowledge, to the teacher from whom he has learned this knowledge. So in the same way, Adhyatma Shastra also, Adhyatma Shastra means spiritual knowledge, it will benefit us only when we have this inner surrender to Bhagwan. Who is the teacher now? Teacher is Bhagwan Krishna himself. For all of us, huh? Not only to Arjuna. Arjuna he taught at that time. I see that the camera is blinking. Anyway, let us see how it goes. So Arjuna he taught at that time. But today, while we are sitting here and studying Bhagavad Gita, in our heart we should have this conviction, whatever Bhagwan is saying, there is some value to it. If I don't understand it, it is okay. But gradually, I will put forth effort to align my thinking with Bhagwan's thinking. So with this, Arjuna says, Bhagwan, I am your disciple right now. Gurudev used to say, one who submits to discipline is called a disciple. Means he likes to be, I'm searching for the right word, he likes to be under somebody's command. Actually, when a student goes to a Gurukula to study, that student is always under the watch of the teacher. Whatever that student is doing is very closely watched. Not for any other purpose, just for this purpose that the teacher is trying to make those pots, with the raw clay which is there. So the teacher wants to ensure that, the shape that he wants to form in the student, that is actually taking place. Otherwise, it is like drawing rangoli on water. You draw it very beautifully and everything, and time and again, the student goes and exposes it to some wind, some fan, somebody turns it on. So entire painting has gone down again. So that student who is ready to be under somebody's command, who is ready to follow discipline willingly, that student is called disciple. So Arjuna has that thought now, and you will see from this point all the way until 18th chapter of Gita, he does not ask a single question about war strategies. He does not go back to his thinking from first chapter. He is just trying to clarify what is Bhagwan trying to say. All his questions are like that. Later on questions, if you see in 17th chapter and so on, those are nowhere related to what his current situation was. Means he is absorbing, soaking in what Bhagwan is telling him. So with that in mind, these two are very beautiful shlokas, 7th and 8th one. And in 8th one he says, Bhagwan, don't tell me that I should take care of this by myself. I cannot. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyat. And this sorrow, it is, very, very unbearable. And I don't see any solution here or hereafter. I might go to great, great positions, great, great lokas. Lokas mean different worlds I might go to. There, what is the case? There is less competition and more resources are there. In Swarga Loka, in all other lokas. He says, even if I go there, I don't think my sorrow will go away. I mean, mental agitation won't go away even there also. This is portrayed very beautifully in our Puranas. The story of Daksha Prajapati is to indicate this point. Long story short, I don't know if I told this last time, that Daksha was one of, the minister who was promoted to, let us say, the prime minister. amongst every one of them. He was the head. He got a new promotion. And because he was promoted, the way they would celebrate is by having a big yajna. At that time, in those lokas, even now they might be doing that. The way to celebrate was by having a big yajna. And when Daksha Prajapati, Daksha means one who is very, very efficient, very skilled. So when he got that promotion, he called everybody for that yajna. All of them were seated. And there were two people who were there who did not stand up, when this Daksha came. And they were Brahmaji and Lord Shiva. And Daksha feels offended just because Lord Shiva did not stand up. So many people were there, so many great devatas had come. All of them gave him respect. But just because one person did not give respect, he gets very agitated. He starts saying so many things to Bhagwan Shiva. And then the story goes, different things happen after that. But the whole point is to say that even if somebody becomes Daksha Prajapati, insecurity and this mental agitation will not go away. Unless we get to know about the teaching of our Shastra. That is what Arjuna is asking now. Bhagwan, you teach me. Okay. Then what happened? Let us read 9th and 10th shloka together. Sanjaya uvacha eva muktva hrushikesham gudakeshaf parantapah nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvah tamuvacha hrushikeshah prahasanniva bharata senayorubhayor madhye vishidantamidam vachah Sanjaya uvacha eva muktva hrushikesham gudakeshaf parantapah nayotsya iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvah tamuvacha hrushikeshah prahasanniva bharata senayorubhayor madhye vishidantamidam vachah. Now Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra, Eva muktva hrushikesham gudakeshaf parantapah. So the word parantapa, if you say, it will become an adjective for Dhritarashtra. Parantapa means one who is scorcher of enemies. But in some readings, it is parantapaha. So then it becomes adjective for Arjuna, which is more appropriate in this context. So both readings are there, parantapaha or parantapa. So having given all these logical, emotional arguments and having surrendered unto Bhagwan, Arjuna sat down. Saying what? Nayotse iti govindam uktva tushnim babhuvaha. He became quiet. After saying that, Bhagwan, I am not going to fight. Now somebody might wonder, previous verse only he said, I am your disciple, shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Means what? I am ready to do what you tell me. I am ready to listen to what you tell me. And now he is telling, nayotse, that I won't fight. It looks like, contradictory statement he is making. So the way we should understand here is, Arjuna is saying, Bhagwan, I will not fight just because you have told me in the second shloka and third shloka, Klaibhyam Masmagam of Partha. Directly, just by getting a yes and no answer, I don't want to fight. Tell me the point, tell me the way by which I can think for myself and reach to the point that you are right now. Teach me Tattva Viveka Prakara. What we saw yesterday in Tattva Bodha class. I don't want yes and no answers. I want to learn the art of thinking. Because Arjuna is that kind of a student. And that is why we need so much elaboration, right, of Bhagavad Gita. If answer was that simple, we don't need so many chapters and every teaching and everything. And the same Arjuna who said na yotse, towards the end of Bhagavad Gita says, Karishye vachanam tava. Now I have clarity. I will do what you want me to do. I have understood what is the bigger picture of this life. And the purpose of teacher also is not to hold on to the student. Bhagwan Krishna here, it looks like, he's trying to hold Arjuna back, not allowing him to go away. That also Bhagwan says towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, Yatha Ichchasi Tatha Kuru. Our purpose here, Bhagwan says there, that my purpose there was to give you the right vision of how to face this situation in the light of Upanishadic knowledge. Now, having heard this teaching, it is up to you now, whether you want to follow it, if you want to go back, it is up to you. But if knowledge has clearly taken place, Arjuna has to say, Yat Karishye Vachanam Tava. I will do, Bhagwan, what you want me to do. Then Bhagwan says, Bhagwan also doesn't give up. Tamuvacha Hrishikeshaha prahasanniva bharata. Bhagwan now is telling this Arjuna, who is in sorrow, but before doing that, before starting any teaching, he gives a very reassuring smile. That smile, what you have mostly seen sometimes when you go to visit a doctor. When you feel that something is such a big thing that I'm going through, and especially if it's your family doctor who has known you for a long time, even talking to them gives a lot of courage and strength. I say, hey, you don't worry. Nothing has happened. I will solve the problem. Don't worry about it. Even he has not even diagnosed. He has not even put that stethoscope and not even checked anything. But the tone of their speech is such, it is very reassuring, and it is a great skill to have, a reassuring speech. An expression of that is in Bhagwan's smile. He says, Prahasanniva Bharata. Means he knows that what Arjuna is going through is not an unsolvable problem. So he has understood what is the problem and he knows the cure also. Now he starts his teaching in the same place. Senayor ubhayor madhye vishidantam idam vachaha. Vishidantam Arjunam idam vachaha. To that Arjuna who is in sorrow, Bhagwan gives the teaching now. First, Senayor ubhayor, this is the third time, Senayor ubhayor madhye has come. First, Arjuna had said, take my chariot, put it in between both of these armies. Then second time, he breaks down, same place, Senayor ubhayor madhye. The teaching also begins in the same place. Meaning, if the student is ready to learn, it doesn't matter which stage of life we are in, which place we are in. All that we need is that kind of a question that Arjuna has. And that surrender towards Shastra. So now Bhagwan's teaching will start. And as I had mentioned earlier, Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji, who is our, the foundation of everything that we are doing in Bhagavad Gita. All the interpretations of the words, everything comes from Bhagwan's Bhashya. He has not written commentary on 47 shlokas of the first chapter and the first 10 shlokas of second chapter. 57 shlokas, he has not even commented on them. And he begins his commentary in the beginning of this 11th verse that we are going to see now. And he summarizes the entire 57 verses in just 4 words. He says, what is Arjuna's problem? Aham esham mama ete. The whole summary of first chapter and the 10 verses of second chapter is Arjuna is feeling that I am theirs, I belong to them, and they belong to me. Aham esham, I am theirs. Mama ete, they are mine. And starting from this point, Bhagwan says, this is called as erroneous thinking. And we'll come back to this. I know you might have a question about what do you mean erroneous thinking and so on. So Bhagwan's thinking, let us quickly see. He has written long bhashya, but we won't do the whole thing. So he says, Aham esham mama ete. I am theirs and they are mine. This is the first beginning of erroneous thinking. And what is the result of this? So this is the delusion which is there. Result of this is shoka. And when that happens, when shoka and moha, erroneous thinking is that I am theirs, they are mine. And following that, different transactions, whatever we do, that transaction also will be erroneous only. And what will happen in that whole process is we will end up doing what we should not do, and we won't do what we should do. Okay, what is our dharma, that we will not do. And what is adharma, that we will end up doing. Adharma, or you say paradharma, somebody else's dharma, that we will end up doing. So this is Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji's introduction to this whole portion. Now we should think a little bit more upon this point. I am theirs and they are mine. This thought, is it always going to lead us into trouble? Or is there another thing which is happening here because of which we end up into problems? Now let us take a few examples. Let us say the same thought, I am theirs and they are mine. If this thought somebody has towards nation, right? I belong to this country and this country belongs to me. Now the same aham esham mama ete will become a cause for sacrificing towards that country. It will become a cause for letting go of my lower ideals for the sake of some higher altar for my country. Now instead of, in addition to that country, put organization. Wherever we are working, whichever organization we are affiliated to. Same thought. I belong to this organization and this organization belongs to me. It has brought food on my plate and it has taken care of my life. Different other organizations, spiritual, cultural, they have contributed towards my inner happiness. And same thought, I am theirs, they are mine. Now that thought will become a cause for rising above our individuality. Means we are not identifying with only one individual, but we are identifying with a bigger cause. But in case of the problematic situation, that is when we end up identifying with a very, very small portion of this entire creation. If we say, this one person, I am belonging to him, and that person is belonging to me. Whoever that person could be, huh? It could be an object, it could be a person, anything. So the point of discussing this is, when does that thought become a problem? I am theirs and they are mine. It becomes a problem when that altar of attachment, that is a very, very small altar. If we make it bigger and bigger, we will start discovering a lot of things in ourselves. Lot of qualities which are there in us, they will start manifesting out. Imagine the heart of a saint, some Mahatma, who thinks this entire creation to be themselves. Meaning, they feel like, I belong to this entire creation, and this entire creation, which is in my Bhagwan's form, belongs to me. Now, with this mindset, if they are interacting with people, if they are living their life, what must be their vision? We don't have to go too far to find an example. You see Gurudev's life only. How could one person embrace the whole world like that? In spite of different experiences coming their way, yet it never became a source of bondage. Why? Because that altar of Aham Esha Mama Ete was not one person. It had no boundaries, in fact. It was just that Mahatmas, if you want to put this phrase, right, what is the altar at which they are looking as ours? That altar is this entire creation only. Nobody is left out of their family. Aham Esham, I belong to everybody. Wherever they went, everybody thought that they are ours only. Somebody who is traveling so many places, to give that kind of a feeling to everybody is something very unique. And they also cared a lot about other people, right? Aham Esha means I am theirs. Mama Ete, these people are mine. Means whenever they had any problem, any concerns, these Mahatmas felt it was their own problem. So I hope the point over here is conveyed, that this thought becomes a problem when it is towards a very, very finite entity. Either it is a person or it is an object. Expanding that purifies the mind. So now Bhagwan starts with that topic, Aham Esha Mama Ete. He says this is the main problem, because of which we end up getting confused about dharma, when we have a very narrow focus on our life. And now the way this teaching unfolds, right, of Bhagavad Gita, and in particular in second chapter, is this. So Bhagwan is understanding Arjuna's situation now. He says that Arjuna is having confusion at two levels. One level is at dharma level. Okay, that confusion comes, like the example we had seen before. If there is a CEO who is interviewing his son, so while interviewing, at the same time he feels, I am father also, I am CEO also. Then there is confusion about dharma. And confusion about dharma will be different for different people. Somebody who is in medicine, they will have their own confusion about dharma. Main point is, whatever is our role, according to that role, dharma is defined. if we are working somewhere, that is our role. And in that, we might have different types of confusions which are there. So that is dharma-related confusion. Second type of confusion is regarding our own true nature. Not knowing our true nature as pure consciousness and taking ourselves to be this finite jiva. That is the second confusion. So Bhagwan will address both of them. He says this confusion between Atma and Jiva, our own true nature as this pure infinite Brahman, and this finite Jiva, that is a root cause. Taking ourselves to be finite, then we end up doing dharma and adharma. So even if we solve our problem at dharma adharma level, and if we don't address this key point of what is our true nature, then our journey is not complete. It is only a matter of time, something else will come up. So teaching of Bhagavad Gita is to clarify both of these. So now those of you who want can write down the breakup of this verses of second chapter, breakdown of this verses of second chapter. So it will start from 11th verse now, 11th until 30th verse. Bhagwan is going to address the confusion about Atma and Anatma. Means what is the nature of this absolute truth? That is called as teaching of Sankhya. Okay, that is from 11th until 30th verse. Second delusion is about dharma. So that he will address from 31st until 38th verse of second chapter. Okay. One delusion about Atma, that is addressed. Second delusion about dharma, that is addressed from 31st until 38th verse. Now Bhagwan, where do I start? How should I begin my journey? How can I divinize my everyday life? That portion also he will elaborate in this chapter. From 39th until 53rd verse, Bhagwan is going to talk about Karma Yoga. That is a preparation. Okay. How can we sharpen this inner instrument? And then from 54th verse to 72nd verse, which is the last verse of this chapter, Bhagwan is going to say, how does a realized person live in this world? Okay, so that is why Bhagavad Gita second chapter is called as the essence of entire Bhagavad Gita, because it covers all topics. And none of it we should dismiss or give less importance to. Sankhya Yoga is the first topic. What is the nature of highest truth? Second one is from dharma standpoint, 31st shloka onwards, 31st to 38th. 39th shloka onwards, Bhagwan is going to talk about Karma Yoga. And then from 54th shloka onwards, he is going to talk about how does a realized master live in this world. Gurudev has written very beautiful introduction to this second chapter, 11th verse, where he says what is called as complete education. Complete education is complete only when we know all these things. Holistic education, that is word that we see sometimes. When we know about dharma, when we know about karma yoga, and also when we know about what is the highest nature of truth. So with this introduction, let us start with 11th shloka now. Okay, Bhagwan is starting his teaching now. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Ashochanan Vashochastvam, Ashochanan Vashochastvam, Prajnavadanscha Bhashase, प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासूनगतासूंश्च गतासूनगतासूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः अशोच्यानन्वशोच्यस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासूनगतासूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः. This shloka is called as Pratijna Shloka. Means it is the declaration of entire Bhagavad Gita also. If we say, it won't be wrong. What is the result of this entire study of Bhagavad Gita, Shastra and everything? That is given in that last line. Nanu shochanti panditaha. Wise people do not have sorrow, do not have grief. How to reach to that point? There is a path. Ashochan anvashochastvam prajna vadanscha bhashase. Bhagavan is telling Arjuna now, Arjuna, you are grieving for those who are not supposed to be grieved over. Who are they? Bhishma and Drona. Bhagavan is telling Arjuna, that do you even know who Bhishma and Drona are? Why they are not to be grieved over? Because they are very meritorious people. Means their punya karma is such that their journey ahead is very well taken care of. They will go to higher worlds and greater destinations just based on their own karmas. So from that standpoint, don't grieve over them. They are very well taken care of. And this, as we discussed last time, becomes more clear towards the end of Mahabharata, when Bhagavan takes Yudhishthira to Bhishma. And he says, if you have any question on dharma, ask Bhishma. And also when Bhishma composes Vishnu Sahasranama. Vishnu Sahasranama that we chant is Bhishma Vacha only, composed by Bhishma. So somebody who is such a great devotee of Bhagavan, Bhagavan is telling Arjuna, you don't have to grieve. But from the standpoint of knowledge, knowing that we are this immortal, infinite self which cannot be destroyed, from that standpoint also, one should not grieve. And Bhagavan is telling that Arjuna, you gave all these logical answers and very sequential way of telling your points, which was very good. But how come both of it is together in you? That on one side, you are speaking like a very knowledgeable person. Prajna vadanscha bhasate. But on the other side, grief is also there. Both cannot go together. One who has knowledge, one who is a pandita, the very definition of pandita, according to Bhagavan, is the one who does not grieve. Gatasun agatasunshcha na anushocanti panditaha. These wise people are those who don't grieve over, Gurudev is to say, those who have gone or those who have not yet gone. Gatasun agatasunshcha. Gata asun means pranas, they have gone. Asu means prana. Gata asu means pranas which have departed. Agata asu means pranas which have not departed. Over both, wise people don't grieve. You put it the other way. Meaning what? If shoka is there, means that person is not a pandita. Bhagavan's definition of knowledgeable person, wise person is very different from worldly definition. What is worldly definition of Pandita? Somebody who can speak very eloquently, somebody who can maybe memorize a lot of things, somebody who can cross-reference. All those could be signs of Pandityam. Right? We say whenever we see or hear somebody speak very eloquently on any topic, we say, such a great speaker. But Bhagavan says, my definition of Pandita is not that. My definition of Pandita is, has sorrow gone or not? Has shoka gone or not? And the only person who will be able to tell this is we ourselves. Means we should ask ourselves after studying Vedanta, has sorrow gone in life or not? Okay, this is Bhagwan's understanding of Pandita. Now, how did he become a Pandita? Who is a Pandita? Pandita is the one who has clear knowledge of this self. Self is Atma. What is the nature of Sakshi? What is the nature of Brahma? That knowledge is very clearly available to this Pandita. And on the strength of that, he is able to keep sorrow away. And he is able to understand what is the meaning of transactional reality and what is absolute reality. And what is the relationship between them. The word you must have heard from in Gurudev's talk is relationless relationship. What is the relationship between mirage water and desert sand? They are appearing on each other, but there is no relationship. What is the relationship between the sky or the space and blueness in that space, blueness in that sky? That space or that sky is unaffected by this blue color. In the same way, this consciousness, which is infinite, that is unaffected by any of the thing which happens in this Vyavaharik world. Those who have done Vedanta Shravanam, this becomes a very gentle reminder of that fact. Those who are still beginning on this journey, this is a good starting point. Because look at Bhagwan's clarity, where he is starting the teaching from. Okay. So Bhagwan says, such a person is called Pandita. One who is not losing the sight of that pure consciousness at any time. That person is Pandita, and he is able to overcome his grief or sorrow with that knowledge. In Bhagavatam, it is said, when Bhagwan was winding up his avatara, right, to go back, Arjuna happens to go to Dwaraka after Bhagwan has left from this world. Means he has wound his avatara. And when he goes there, he sees, Bhagwan is not there, and lot of things happen. When Arjuna goes there and comes back, he gets robbed on the way by simple, ordinary people, in spite of having all Gandiva and everything. And he's so much in sorrow when he comes back to Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira is just not able to figure out why is Arjuna so sad. And then he continuously weeps and just remembers what all things have happened with Bhagwan's grace. But then in Bhagavatam it is said that Arjuna is able to come out of that sorrow. He is able to console himself with the knowledge that he had heard from Bhagwan in Bhagavad Gita. This is said in Bhagavatam. When Arjuna was in that sorrow, he was able to come out of that sorrow with the strength of this knowledge. That is why it is said, Nanu Shochanti Panditaha. It won't happen overnight. but it has to happen in that way. And as we said, Pandita is not the one who only can remember things. In fact, that itself becomes another bondage at some point. There is another story of Madhusudana Saraswati ji, who has written a beautiful commentary on Bhagavad Gita. It is called as Gudartha Deepika. And he has also composed a lot of Advaitic works, like Advaita Siddhi, all of that he has composed. And it is said one day, after he had composed all this work, he was sitting in his kutia, and he was doing something in that kutia. One Avadhuta walked into that hut, and he went and sat on that asan, which was Madhusudana Saraswati ji's asan. And he was surprised, Swamiji, Saraswati ji, he saw, how come this Avadhuta is coming and sitting over there? But in his mind, he knew that this is Bhagwan's play. There is something he has come to teach me now. So he prostrated before that Avadhuta and said, Bhagwan, do you have anything to tell me? He said, yes. Whenever you debate with scholars, whenever you have discussion on Shastra, and when you win that debate, do you feel good about it? Do you feel happy? So Madhusudana Saraswati ji said, yes, I feel very happy that I have established my point over other people. He said, then when somebody else defeats you in a debate, do you feel sad? He said, yes, that is also there. I also feel sad when somebody defeats me in an argument. And that Avadhuta tells Madhusudana Saraswati ji, this is what is called as bondage. This scholarliness, why did we bring this story? Pandita word. Pandita is not only the one who can have this, ability to think and everything. And that Avadhuta tells Saraswati ji that identification with mind, that is what becomes the cause of bondage. And then Swamiji, it is said he does some more bhakti sadhana and everything, but this is not for them, it is for all of us. They sometimes, out of their humility and compassion, they tell those stories, keeping them in that character. But we have to just get that essence, that Pandita is the one who is able to come out of sorrow with knowledge. All right, we'll pause here. There are some announcements and we'll take a few questions. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Submitting oneself to a teacher fully seems like the right thing to do. But however, how do we determine one is submitting to the right teacher? To grow in career or grow spiritually? Good. When it comes to choosing the teacher, in our Shastras, it is very clearly given that we cannot. Although we might feel that we are doing it, it is said all that we can do is have a very sincere quest for whichever field of knowledge that we want to learn. Either it is spiritual knowledge or even otherwise, but more so into when it comes to spiritual knowledge. Right? We might feel that we are searching for Guru, but it doesn't work that way. So more work what we can do and more what is in our control is to increase our qualification. Start thinking about, can I have the question like Arjuna is having right now? Can I search with that kind of intensity that Arjuna is searching right now? So when that happens, it is said Bhagwan has the responsibility now. We don't have to interfere in Bhagwan's role. He makes sure that the right meeting takes place between the teacher and the student. And another point mentioned in Mandukya Karika, it's a beautiful Karika which is written, where Gaudapadacharya says, Yam bhavam darshayed yasya tam bhavam satu pashyati. Tam chavati sa bhutvasau tadgraha samupaititam. Means whichever teacher comes in our life at whatever point, that is the right teacher. And that teacher will show us something which will come and protect us. Means, what Gaudapadacharya is saying there is, different teachers have shown different solutions to different students, right? Somebody might have shown japa as one solution. Somebody might have shown some kind of upasana as some solution. So like this, you have different solutions available given by different teachers. And there he says that if one is sincerely practicing whatever is being told by that teacher, that practice and that knowledge will come to protect that student. Tam cha avati. Avati means protects. Cha bhutvasau tad grahas samupaititam. And according to our punya karmas, according to our deeds, we end up in different darshanas. It might be possible in previous life, we were in some other thinking. Darshana means school of thought. Our thinking might have been very different at certain point. Why previous life? Even in this life we see, right? 15 years before, what our thinking was might have been very different from what it was 5 years ago than what it is today. So we have graduated across different darshanas. So that also will happen by Bhagwan's grace only. He will send the right, teachers in our life, and also he will give us this ability to think in that direction. But I feel very sincerely that if somebody has found Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji as their Sharanam, means bowing down to what he has said in his teaching, then our job is done. We don't have to go anywhere else. And whatever Gurudev's work, all commentaries, Gurudev refers back to Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji. And wherever other, better or some deeper meaning is given by other teachers, other Mahatmas, they are also referenced. Like when it comes to sadhanas, all different, teachers whom we have, their sadhanas are referenced to. But when it comes to Siddhanta, then Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji is our go-to person. Go-to is a very compromised word. Sharanam is the best one. Where do I take refuge in? That is what it is. I mentioned a word called as avadhuta. Avadhuta means a wandering monk. He doesn't have any kind of indicators where he is coming from, where he is going to, like our Shukdev ji. Such a Mahatma is called as avadhuta. Hari Om. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.